Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to the 2020 UT Butterfly Festival, which is our biggest field day out here at the UT Ag Research and Education Center in Oak Ridge. We've gone virtual, so we're not here live today, but we certainly are glad that we are putting this on and working with the UT Institute of Agriculture, Marketing, and Communications folks to make this available, and just hope you have a nice time viewing it. And we want you back here next year, and hopefully we'll have a big event and everybody will be here together and we'll have a great time. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Michelle Campanis, Education Coordinator at the University of Tennessee Arboretum. Welcome to our 5th annual Butterfly Festival. This is our first virtual Butterfly Festival. We wish we could all be together in person this year, but we didn't want to miss the opportunity to share one of the most valuable parts of the Butterfly Festival, which is our educational speakers. We're going to have 2 great speakers for you today, Chris Light and Lynn Bales, to give you some great butterfly information. And one of the biggest highlights of always for our Butterfly Festival is our butterfly release. This year we're releasing painted ladies rather than monarchs. We've been learning some things that this may be a better butterfly to release. So as we learn, we want you to learn. And today you're going to have a great opportunity to learn some great things you can do at home to help our pollinators. And now what you've been waiting for, one of our favorite parts of our Butterfly Festival every year, is our butterfly release. Here we go with our 200 painted ladies.
Hey, there they go. Yeah. I'm free. Hey guys, we can get out.
Do they come to you? No, not yet.
It's been a lot of
fun. It's there.
Rain garden over the last 2 years.
That's all to get out.
Shake them real good.
Come on. There they go. He's coming.
Haven't seen any dragonflies bombing them yet.
Or birds.
Yeah. All right, just pick you a spot somewhere.
Hi, I'm Chris Light, and I'm an outreach educator for the American Museum of Science and Energy. And back in January, my husband and I got to go to Mexico to see the monarch butterflies. It was a lifelong dream, and we finally got a chance to do it. Luckily, we did it right before the virus hit, and today I'm going to be talking about that and showing our wonderful adventure. In December, we had my husband and I, this is Kenny, we had our 40th wedding anniversary. And on our milestone anniversary, we always like to do something big. So it's always been a dream of mine to get to see the monarch butterflies in Mexico. I've been raising monarch caterpillars for 30-something years, and I always wanted to see where they went. So we decided to look into it. And we went down there with Natural Habitats Adventures group. They are a subsidiary of the World Wildlife Federation. So we're going to get to start our trip. So when I was a kid, I remember this very vividly. I was out on the playground one day in elementary school, and I looked up. It was a beautiful fall day, and I saw this monarch butterfly sailing overhead. And it just made an indelible memory. So we never knew exactly at that time where the butterflies went. And it was many years later that they finally found out. So like I said, this presentation is going to be about the overwintering monarchs, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about butterflies so that you can understand a little bit more about their life cycle. And all of these are ones that we have here in East Tennessee. Okay, this is the Baltimore checker spot butterfly, and they must have interesting sensory organs because this one was found on a dead skunk. So butterflies and moths only drink liquids. If you ever see their mouth part, they've got a coiled mouth part. When I taught the butterfly class to my students, we would use one of those little things that you blow at a birthday party. And I said, that's what their mouth is like. It's coiled. It's a hollow tube, and so they're able to drink liquids with that. So they don't drink just nectar, but they'll also drink fruit juices, sap, sweat. Have you ever had a butterfly land on you and drink sweat? They're getting the salts and the minerals out of you. And even liquids from urine and dung. So the coiled mouth part is called a proboscis. And butterflies smell through their antennae. They don't have a nose. Insects do not have a nose, so they smell through their antennae. And I thought it was interesting when I learned that their sense of smell, the monarch sense of smell, is 5,000 times stronger than ours. So they're kind of like a dog. This is a skipper butterfly, and it's on a blazing star. I took that picture over at the Jefferson Cedar Barrens. So the blazing stars will be blooming pretty soon. But you can see how long that proboscis is when they uncoil it. One time I asked my students, I said, how do you think a butterfly tastes? And this kid goes, probably pretty bad. I said, okay, let me rephrase that. So I was wanting to know what body part they thought the butterflies use. And it's hard to believe that they use their feet. So their taste sensory organs are in their feet. But if you think about it, they land on a flower, they walk around on it a little bit, and they'll taste that nectar in there, and then they're able to drink it up. If you look at a butterfly, we know that insects all have 6 legs. But if you look at a monarch, you only see 4. And the reason is because the front legs are kind of like vestigial legs. They're very, very small. And I'll show you a picture of those in just a few minutes. So they taste the nectar, but they also taste the food and chemicals in the host plant through the receptors in their feet. So their sense of taste is 2,000 times more sensitive to sugars than humans. Can you imagine what a Coke would taste like to us? Okay, so here we have a monarch butterfly, and she's laying her eggs. So we're going to start in Mexico with this. When they are in Mexico, right before they leave, around the end of February, 1st of March, the butterflies will mate. And those butterflies, those females, will fly to southern Texas, Louisiana, in that area, and they will hunt out milkweed and lay their eggs on the milkweed. They only eat milk, the caterpillars only eat milkweed, and I'll tell you why in just a few minutes. So, guys, I hate to tell you this, but the males die shortly after mating. So reproduction is the kiss of death. So the females can mate with numerous males. Some of the sperm packets are used for fertilizing the eggs, and others are stored for nutrition during the flight north. Here's what I was telling you about the vestigial legs. These have 6 little microscopic needles in it that they will, when they land on a leaf, they'll tap it, and they are able to take up some of those chemicals and detect if it is milkweed or not. So a lot of times you'll see many butterflies that will land on a plant, just sort of touch it and take off and fly. That way they know if they've gotten the correct kind of plant to lay their eggs on. This picture here was taken with a 30x stereoscope. So when you look at a butterfly, you won't really see these little legs. That's how tiny they are. So butterflies go through complete metamorphosis. I tell my students that metamorphosis means to change shape. So the first stage, of course, is going to be the egg. The egg is very, very tiny. It's usually laid on the underneath side of the milkweed plant. The caterpillar is in this stage for about 5 days. And the first meal that it has is actually its eggshell, because the eggshell's got a lot of protein in it, and it gives it a good head start. So then we have the caterpillar. This one was just about ready to change. When they first come out, and I'll have a picture of a newly hatched one in just a few minutes, very, very tiny. They're almost impossible to see because they're about 2 millimeters long. So they're very, very tiny. The easiest way to find them is to look for a little tiny hole in the leaf and then look underneath the leaf, and that's how you'll find out if there's a caterpillar on it. If we ate and grew at the same rate that monarch caterpillars do, we would be as big as a school bus and weigh as much as 2 elephants by the time we were 13 years old. So they start out at 2 millimeters, and they're as big as my pinky. They're about 30 millimeters when they get ready to become a chrysalis. So what happens is they will shed their skin, and they become what we call a chrysalis. And this lasts for like 10 to 14 days in this stage. And you can see this one right here has turned black. You can just barely see a little bit of the orange on there, and that is the wings. While they're in this phase, their body becomes like a soup, and I'm going to discuss that later. Okay, this is our female monarch, and I'll tell you how to tell a male from a female. The female, of course, like I said, hunts out the milkweed leaves, and then she'll lay her eggs on them. So you can see that different butterflies have different kinds of eggs. Usually butterflies will lay their eggs singly or just maybe a few at a time. Moths may lay masses of eggs. So that moth caterpillars can really defoliate a plant pretty quickly. I like the Gulf fritillary. It looks like those little corns that you get in the salad bars. What's interesting about the Gulf fritillaries is that they have learned to lay their eggs on the tendrils of the passion flower plants, because passion flowers, if you look at them real closely, they've got what we call extrafloral nectaries. They've got these little green cups that have nectar that's not in the flowers, and they attract ants. If ants come across one of these eggs, they'll eat it. So the butterflies have learned to lay their eggs on the tendrils so that their eggs don't get eaten. I was amazed when I learned that a monarch butterfly can lay as many as 400 to 1,000 eggs. So here's our little newly hatched caterpillar. That was probably a day or two old. After they eat their eggshell, the first thing they're going to eat is the little hairs on the leaf. Then it will eat the leaf itself. So this happens during the spring and the summer. Monarchs don't lay fall eggs that overwinter. That's why they have to fly to Mexico. But some butterflies do have eggs that will overwinter. I thought this was interesting, that caterpillars can actually eat their skin. They don't want to waste that good protein. This one is our Gulf fritillary caterpillar, you can see. So they shed their skin 5 times, and those stages are what we call instars. They poop a lot. So if you ever raise a caterpillar, you're going to have a big mess that you have to clean up every day. They grow for about 2 weeks, and the monarch caterpillars can gain about 3,000 times their birth weight. So like I said, by the time they are ready to become a butterfly, they're huge. Caterpillars only eat certain kinds of plants. So I always like to tell my students, do not put a caterpillar in a box with grass. It would be like somebody putting you in a room with cardboard and expecting you to eat it and live off of it. They have to have certain foods. The reason that monarchs, caterpillars eat milkweed is because milkweed contains a cardiac glycoside that will make a bird sick if it eats it. And if you've ever eaten anything that makes you throw up, you never want to eat it again. So here is a Gulf fritillary caterpillar that is eating its molted skin. So I've had kids call small butterflies baby butterflies. And I said, no, a baby butterfly is a caterpillar, and they cannot lay eggs. So Okay, so here's our monarch caterpillar, and you'll notice it's very, very brightly colored. We call that aposematic coloration. This is a warning to birds and other predators not to eat them. So anytime you see an insect that is red and black, yellow and black, and colored like this, the caterpillar, animals know not to eat them because it's going to have a poison in it. Or bumblebees will sting. So they can either sting or they're poisonous. The caterpillar's body, a lot of times kids say, which end is which? Because they have these little feelers, which we call whiplashes on both ends. But this is the head end here. And the way you can tell is that the true legs are down here. So that all insects have 6 legs, including our larvae. Okay, so we've talked about the true legs here. Like I said, all insects have 3 legs. A lot of times kids don't think of a caterpillar as being an insect. It's just one of the stages of the insect. Here's the head. So the head is pretty small. Insects have compound eyes, but when they're in the caterpillar stage, they're going to have simple eyes. So you'll just see a whole bunch of little tiny eyes. They don't have the big facets like the other insects do. Then the middle part is the thorax, and all the insects have their legs, their wings on their thorax. A lot of times when kids draw like a ladybug, they'll put the legs going all the way down, but the legs do not come out of the abdomen. So when it does have wings, the wings and the true legs will come out of the thorax. The biggest part here is the abdomen. And you notice, you say, well, wait a minute, I see legs on there. But these are what we call prolegs. And they're kind of like little Velcro pads. They've got little hooks on them so that they can hang on to the leaves. But these are not true legs. Most caterpillars have 5 pairs. If you ever look at an inchworm, though, they don't. They've only got, I think, 3 pairs. So what happens is the inchworm has to move like this. So that's why the back end has to catch up with the front end when they walk. Insects, like I said, don't have a nose, so they breathe through something called spiracles, and it's a little hard to see on here, but there's little holes in each one of these black lines here. So insects, the oxygen goes into those little holes and it spreads out into trachea all over their entire body. So whenever you put an insect in a jar, you don't have to worry too much about them suffocating in just a few minutes. One time I had a cockroach for a whole week in a jar that had no food, no water, and no fresh air, and it was still alive, so I finally just let it go. Okay, so this is the pupa stage, or the chrysalis stage. Here you can see this caterpillar is hanging in a J shape. So after it's finished eating all that it's going to eat, it will climb up to a high point, spin a silk mat with its mouth. So the silk comes out of the mouth on a caterpillar. They spin this silk mat. They hang their back feet, the back prolegs, into that silk mat, and then they hang in the shape of a J. And they'll hang like that for about 12 hours. And you can actually watch them. They're pulling air through their spiracles into their body, and it's starting to make them swell. So eventually what happens is that skin will split right behind their head. If you do raise caterpillars and you want to watch and see when this is going to happen, what happens is their whiplashes will start to coil up. They shrivel. The caterpillar will go straight. It's not in a J shape anymore. You're going to notice that the white has actually turned green underneath. And then it's going to start shaking really, really hard. And the skin's going to split right up the back of the neck. It starts to slide up. And I say, it's like my kids used to take their socks off. It just slides up, pulls them off. And here you can see what the chrysalis is going to look like. You can actually tell where the wings are going to be, right there. So the head is down here. And then it's going to start shaking really, really, really hard, and that skin will eventually pop off. So what happens is when the caterpillar becomes a pupa, its insides literally turn into a soup. All of those cells have to be rearranged and turn into something different because your caterpillar eats leaves, the butterfly eats nectar. The caterpillar does not have wings, the butterfly does, so the wings have to form in the chrysalis stage. The caterpillar does not have a reproductive system, the butterfly does. So all of that stuff has to happen within the chrysalis. They have found that the only system that does not change in the pupa phase is the digestive system. And so this is what it looks like after everything's settled. They are beautiful. They look like a piece of jade with gold dots on them. Absolutely gorgeous. Scientists think that those gold dots might help it to look like has dewdrops on it or something, because this is totally helpless in this phase. They don't move, they can't do anything. And then this is what it's going to look like right before the butterfly comes out. So the day before the emergence, it starts to turn black. You can actually see the black starting to show up on it from the scales. Then almost overnight, it turns black like this. You can see that it's getting kind of open up here. So it didn't take much longer for that to come out. Okay, this is a video that I took of a chrysalis. You can see how hard it struggles to get that skin off. I imagine it can feel it, so it probably is irritating to it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get past that. Come on, here we go. Okay, so one day I had been wanting so badly to get a picture of a butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, so for 6.5 hours, I stood out there with my camera on a tripod, and you can see I had my bug box lid, and I tied it to a tree, so you'll get to hear what I said. So this was 5 minutes later. Now I want you to watch the mouth. When it comes out, its mouth is going to be in 2 pieces. And you can see it's coming out head first. Now, look how big the abdomen is too when it comes out. I kicked the tripod. See how big the now see the mouth? See how it's in 2 pieces? Okay, so what she's going to do is she's going to start pushing that mouth together. It's almost like zipping up a zipper. So she's using her palps right there, and she's pushing the mouth part together. So what she's going to do, you're going to see her abdomen is going to be moving, and she's pumping the fluids from her abdomen into the wings, and you can see the wings are actually getting bigger. You see how she's pushing her mouth together right there? And that's what she's doing right there.
Her abdomen is very, very large. She's going to start pumping the fluid in her abdomen into the veins in the wings, which will make them get a whole lot larger.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get past that because it lasted a lot longer, but it's just fascinating to watch that happen. Okay, so here's how you can tell a male from a female. The males have a dark spot on the lower vein of the lower wings, so, and the veins are much thinner than they are on the female. This was one of the ones that I photographed down in Mexico. So he uses these spots have the pheromone in it that will actually attract the female. So in this case, the female doesn't attract the male attracts the female. Okay, so this was our trip. We went down there from January the 11th through the 18th. And we actually went down a couple of days early so we could see Mexico City and get used to the high altitude and that type of thing. But like I said, we went with Natural Habitats Adventures, and it was a wonderful group to go with. So we flew to Mexico City, stayed a couple of days there. Then we went to a little town that's not on the map, but it was called Angangueo, which is up here near Morelia in the state of Michoacan. So the preserves are near the little town of Angangueo, which is up here. We went to two different ones. Two of them are open to the public, and the other, there's 5 different preserves up there. And we got to go to 2 of them. This is a very high area. The monarchs were located between 10,000 and 11,000 feet. And the reason they go up there is to escape the cold weather, which is hard to believe. But if they are up in the trees, it can protect them from freezing. If they're down on the ground, if it gets cold enough, they can freeze down there. So these reserves are set aside by these owners of the people that live in these communities, and they're called ejidos. And they, the people in these communities protect those butterflies. And I'm going to tell you some sad things about that in a little bit. So the 2 preserves that we went to are called El Rosario and Chinqua. We went to El Rosario twice. So we got to go late in the afternoon, and then the last time we went was in the morning. Okay, so this is the El Rosario Preserve. The sign in Spanish says, "The migration of the monarch butterfly deserves our respect and protection." So this is the migration, which is absolutely incredible when you think about a small animal going about over 2,000 miles. So I'm going to start it in Mexico, the life cycle in Mexico. So this is the little town that we stayed in. It was Angangueo. There's trees up there, up in the top of the mountains that are called Oyamel fir trees, and these are the main trees that they will overwinter on. These butterflies, when they fly south, can go more than 250 miles a day on the southbound winds at 35 miles an hour. All of the monarchs east of the Rockies will go to Mexico. The ones west of the Rockies will go to around Pacific Grove in California. The numbers of the California migration have plummeted. It's very, very worrying. Okay, so this is the first generation. The butterflies, like I said, they will mate in Mexico. The females will fly to the southern part of the United States, usually around Texas and Louisiana. They find milkweed, they lay their eggs on it. Those caterpillars become butterflies. That's going to be generation 2. So generation 2 is the ones that will fly up to our area. So when you saw that butterfly that was released in June, that was generation 2. Okay, so this is usually around May or June that we see this group. That group's going to have their young will be generation 3. They fly to southern Canada and the northern part of the United States. This group will make generation 4. Generation 4 sometimes will make generation 5, but usually it's just 4 generations. This is the group that we call the Methuselah generation because they will delay mating for up to 6 months. So these are the ones that will fly from up in this area all the way to Mexico. And they will stay down there until March. Around March is when they start to continue the cycle. So there can be up to 600 million butterflies in that area. It's just absolutely astounding. Okay, so like I said, we were very, very high. The altitude was between 10,000 and 11,000 feet. And I'll show you how we got there. It was interesting. So you can see that it's just amazing how many butterflies there are. Okay, so getting there, we packed up in this little town into these pickup trucks. We could put about 8 people in each pickup truck. No seatbelts, very, very steep roads. So we're bouncing along on these, the back of these little trucks, and it was cold. Even though it doesn't snow up there, it was still pretty cold. So we were packed up in there, and you can see how steep these roads are. So once we got to the preserve, to get up to the butterflies, to make it easier on us old people, they let us ride these little horses. So we went about a mile up these steep, dusty paths up to the trailhead. And then once we got there, we got to a point, we got off the horses, then we walked about a half a mile up to the butterfly colonies. There were a few people up there. This man here and this lady were part of the ejido, and they were the ones that would help to keep people under control. And we were smart to go during the week. They said that during the weekends it is unbelievably crowded up there. So we were there at a great time. But if you see all these blobs, those are butterflies. That's all butterflies. So going up there was extremely dry and dusty. So I said, other than what moisture the horses provided, this was the dry season, so there was no rain. It was extremely dusty going up there. So they let us wear these, and I actually brought I don't have it with me. It's in that bag right there. They gave us these neck gaiters to wear. So we got to wear this. We didn't know that we were going to be wearing masks all the time later on, but these are our little, this is some of our swag that Natural Habitats gave us. Okay, so this was the second preserve that we went to. So we got off the bus over here, we got on our horses, and so the Sendero de Caballo is the horse trail, and so we went on this trail up to here. So that was about a mile. We got off the horses, then we walked on the Sendero a Pie, so that was about half a mile walk there or so. We got to see the butterflies. And then we got to walk all the way back. Okay, so the butterflies can be disturbed pretty easily. So we were told to be as quiet as possible. It was very hard to do. I had to keep myself under control. But they wanted us to be quiet, no flash. Everything was in Spanish there, so that made it fun. This told you not to pick up the butterflies, whether they were alive or dead. So there was signs like this all over the place up there at the top. So seeing the butterflies for the first time was absolutely magical. They were hanging from the trees. All of those are butterflies. It was just incredible to see that many. And they would line the trunks of the trees. When the sun came up, they got warm enough, they would start to open up their wings and start to fly. It's hard to believe that a butterfly only weighs about half a gram, but if you get enough of them, 10,000 or more, they can actually break the branches. The branches would hang down and sometimes they'll actually break. And we always had to remember, don't forget to look up. It was just incredible to see them flying around, just hundreds and hundreds of them. This is a video. Come on. There you go. Sorry. So you can, technical, it's working now. If it had been warmer, we would have seen even more of them flying around. But all those blobs that you see, that is all butterflies. Kenny was videoing this. I told him, I said, look up. Okay, not all the butterflies survive. It was really sad, but you know, when you've got 600 million butterflies, not all of them are going to make it. We would find some of them down on the ground. They are poisonous. They keep that poison in their body from the caterpillar stage. So even the butterflies are poisonous. That's why they've got the orange and black coloration. But there are 2 species of birds down there that can't eat them. So the black-headed grosbeak and the black-headed oriole, black-backed oriole, are able to eat these butterflies. And there's actually a little mouse that lives up there that can eat them also. So that's another reason that they try to stay up in the trees, is to keep from being eaten. So we got to see some other interesting things. There were a lot of hummingbirds. Even though it was January, that high up in the mountains, there were a lot of different wildflowers. If you know me well enough, you know I love wildflowers. And I was able to identify over 100 different species on that trip, which was incredible. This was exciting too. On the way back down, they said, we're going to stop along this creek and show you something really cool. And it was a rare salamander called an axolotl. And so we got to hike out and go see that. This was one of the women in our group, and she got lucky. She got to have a butterfly land on her head. Got to see some beautiful birds like this summer tanager and lots of different wildflowers. So this was good for the butterflies to have a nectar source up there on top of the mountain. Okay, so for years and years, nobody knew where the monarchs went. And there was a man from Canada, he was an entomologist named Fred Urquhart, and he had people start tagging these butterflies. So 45 years later, in January of 1975, all this work finally paid off when an American businessman said, I think I may know where these go. So he and Dr. Urquhart got together, and they finally made their way up the mountains and found these butterflies. I'll show you. And so this is what they found. Can you imagine what a shock that was when they got up on the top of the mountain and saw these gazillions of butterflies? This is how you tag a butterfly. You can actually order these little tags. They're from the University of Kansas, and this is one that we tagged at Willowbrook years ago. It's just a very, very tiny tag. You put it on the underneath side of their wings. So if somebody finds one of these butterflies, they can send the number that's on there to the University of Kansas, and that way they'll know where the butterfly was tagged. This was interesting. This was one of the guides, and he pulled out his wallet because we started talking about the tags, and he found these 3 tags. The 3 white ones are from the eastern butterflies, and this one was, the red one was from one of the western butterflies. So I thought that was really fascinating. Okay, this is Dr. Lincoln Brower, and I got the honor to meet him back in 2009. He was the one who did a lot of research on the butterflies, and he was the one that found out how they make it down to Mexico. They use the sun, but they also, he discovered that they've got crystals of magnetite in their head, and that way it's sort of like a compass. They're able to find their way down there. So he and Dr. Urquhart actually did quite a bit of competition. Dr. Urquhart was not real popular with the people that lived in the community because he wasn't very friendly. Dr. Brower was well loved. And he spent quite a bit of time in the mountains down there. Okay, so like I said, he discovered that there's crystals of magnetite in their head. There's different types of milkweed. There's many, many species of milkweed. This is one that I took a picture of down in Texas. This one's called antelope horns. And one of the things that Dr. Urquhart discovered is that different kinds of milkweed contain different types of chemicals. So they're actually able to do studies of what the caterpillars ate by studying the butterflies to find out the chemical in their body. And that way they can tell where they originated from. So this is butterfly weed. This is a real common, it's blooming right now. You'll see it out in the fields. This is swamp milkweed. I saw some right out here in the garden. Butterflies will lay their eggs on that one also. It likes to have wet feet, so you'll find it near lakes. This is white milkweed. And then this is the common milkweed. If you decide to put milkweed in your garden, do not plant this unless you have a lot of room for it to spread out, because your whole neighborhood will have it. It sends out underground runners. So the swamp milkweed's a good one. The butterfly weed's another good one to have. But common milkweed, unless you've got a lot of room to let it spread, it can take over, and it gets really big. It grows taller than I am. Okay, so this, Dr. Brower passed away in 2018, and when we were at the Chinqua Reserve, they had a beautiful memorial to him. It had a butterfly at the top of it, but the light was horrible, so I couldn't get a good picture of it. But like I said, he was well loved. So Angangueo is the little town that we stayed in for 3 nights. And the people are so enamored with the butterflies, and plus it's a big business for them up there. We saw paintings of, this was a huge mural that went down an entire wall, but this one part was about the butterflies. Angangueo had at one time been a copper and silver mining town, but a few years ago, I think it was about 9 or 10 years ago, they had a tremendous flood. One of the dams broke, and it killed a lot of people. It wiped out a tremendous amount of the town. So now the butterfly tourism is extremely important for this people of this town. I saw these little kids as we were going down, they were walking up, and I just thought that was so cute with their little butterfly wings on. So like I said, ecotourism is extremely important. The minute we got off of the little pickup trucks, we were inundated with kids selling different trinkets. And the pine needle baskets were really, really popular. There's pine needles are about that long. And so the people would weave them into baskets and trivets and that type of thing. And I bought several of them because they were light and easy to bring back. Even the money, the 50 peso money bill had the monarch butterflies on it. Beautiful money. And that was just another one of the murals. One of the things that we got to do that was a lot of fun, we got to go to an elementary school and talk to some of the students. They were fourth graders. And I had been trying to learn a little bit of Spanish before I went, and then they thought that was really funny. So one of the places that we got to go was to the Museum of Anthropology. And if you ever go to Mexico City, it is unbelievable. It's a fantastic museum. I thought this was really interesting. This was done over 1,000 years ago. And if you look closely, these are butterflies. And so the people of Teotihuacan had made these sculptures in honor of the butterfly god. And so they believed that the butterflies carried the spirits of the dead to the afterlife. No, thank goodness. I would say about 40%, not 50%, was in English, so we were able to read most of it. So the protection of the butterfly habitats and their food sources is crucial for their survival. Illegal logging in the forest is a big, big problem. One of the things that we were interested in is that the state of Michoacan is where we get all of our avocados. And the cartels have taken over a lot of that. So what's happening, they call it green gold. And so what's happening is that they're wanting to expand the avocado plantations, and they're moving up the mountains. And what was horribly sad was when we got back, we found out that the night before we got to Angangueo, the man who was the head of the preserve was killed. They found him a week later in a well. So he had been in a meeting with some of the, I guess, the cartel members, and they took his life. And then a week after that, another person, one of the guides up there, was killed. So we got there at the right time. Everything just started falling apart after that. So yeah, they found him deceased on the 29th of January. And that is Homer Gonzalez Gomez. So these are some of the threats to the monarch butterflies. Pesticides are one of the worst things that we can do. Herbicides, which kill the plants. Cars, butterflies get hit by cars. Loss of larval food sources. So when you kill these plants, the milkweed, there's not going to be anything for the butterflies or the caterpillars to eat. Predators, this is a tachnid fly. So this is the fly that lays their eggs on the caterpillars that I was telling you about earlier. So there's different parasites, like the cowsid wasp, different protozoa can kill them. Bacterial and viral diseases, and then of course illegal logging in the reserves. And so what we can do to help is to avoid using pesticides in the gardens. Don't buy plants treated with neonicotinoids. A few years ago I was at Home Depot and I saw these tags on these plants that said, oh, these are treated with neonicotinoids. They'll keep anything from eating your plants. Well, if butterflies eat the nectar out of those plants, if a butterfly lays their eggs on their plants and the caterpillars eat those plants, they will die.
How do you know they've been treated?
They'll have a tag on them. I complained, and I'm sure a lot of people complained. They don't sell treated plants anymore at Home Depot. So it pays to complain. Okay, plant native milkweeds in your yard. This will give the monarchs a place to lay their eggs. There's a really pretty tropical milkweed. This is orange and yellow. That's one you do not want to plant because it can mess up their life cycle.
Become a citizen scientist. You can go up to Tremont and actually help tag these monarchs. It's really fun. I tried it one time, never did catch one because they're too fast. But there was actually one that was tagged at Tremont that was found. The tag was found in Mexico. Okay, you can get on monarchwatch.org. This will give you a lot of information. You can actually order the tags if you want to tag them yourself. Okay, and then encourage ecotourism. If you have a chance to go down to see the monarchs in Mexico, it is definitely worth it. And so this was our group. We had 16 people in the group, so it was a very small, very manageable group. All over the country. They came from all over the U.S. So, adios, amigos.
Hi, I'm Stephen Lynn Bells, retired naturalist. I worked at IMS Nature Center for 21 years. I'm an author for the University of Tennessee Press. I've written 3 books on nature and natural history. But at the Butterfly Festival, I will be doing a talk on the miracle of metamorphosis. Since I retired, I have focused on that topic of complete metamorphosis and taken a lot of photographs as it happens. It's incredible. Anyway, welcome. My name is Stephen Lynn Bells. I was an educator naturalist at IMS Nature Center for 20 years. My forte is birds, primarily, but after I retired, I wanted to kind of refocus, and it's not retiring, it's refocusing my life a little bit. And if you know your birds, this is the time of year it gets quiet. They're tired, they're molting, they may have raised 2, 3, 4 clutches, they're exhausted, and so they disappear. So for most bird watchers, this is the time of year we have to look for kind of something else and to get involved with. I started getting involved with butterflies, and in particular metamorphosis. That particular thing, now we all learned about that in the 4th grade. But it was something that mesmerized me, and I decided I would refocus some of my retirement into this thing, this miracle of metamorphosis. And there will be some repetitive information. We work separately, so anyway. I love this quote. There is only 2 ways to live your life. As though nothing is a miracle, or as though everything is a miracle. That's a quote for Albert Einstein, but that is, all naturalists believe that. It's when you go out into this world, and even at my age, I am constantly finding something that blows me away. I go, oh my goodness, how come I didn't know about this? So this is the miracle of metamorphosis. Life on Earth. They now think, roughly before things started falling apart, that there were between 3 million and 8.7 million is a new number of species on this planet. 80 to 90% are insects. That's why they're everywhere. And this means that 45 to 60% go through complete metamorphosis. It is happening all around us constantly. It's an absolute wonder we don't trip over it. But in truth, it all happens so secretly, so privately, most of us never know it. And it is kind of small. So this is kind of how I'm refocusing my retirement is metamorphosis. Complete metamorphosis. These are some of the insects that go through complete metamorphosis. Beetles, and there's 300,000 species of beetles on this planet. Bees, wasps, ants, fleas, mosquitoes, moths, and butterflies. So I'll finally get down to the topic of the day. Now, if you do get National Geographic magazine and got your June issue, you know, insects are in major trouble. All around the world, many populations are down 70%. Down 70% since the 1960s. We simply don't have as many as we used to. As a birder, I worry about this because there's certain birds that's what they eat, insects, and I won't go into everything, but I'm not seeing nearly the number of chimney swifts I used to. They eat flying insects, so I'm very worried about that one species of birds. Let's go back to butterflies. It is estimated there's roughly 17,500 species of butterflies on this planet. Now, this is before the National Geographic came out, and the butterflies are reading it going, oh my goodness, we're in trouble. But in this country, roughly 750 species of butterfly. And they all go through complete metamorphosis. It happens all around us. It is out there all around us. Everyone needs a good, smart 10, 11, 12-year-old to be an advisor to talk to. And this is a young man named Oliver DiTillo. And Oliver is, I think he's 13 now, but I took this photograph. Oliver is a volunteer at Tremont. I am now a volunteer at Tremont to be a facilitator of tagging butterflies. That was one thing I could never do at IMES because it happens in the fall when we were very busy. Now, but I'm refocused, I can go up and help. So I'm one of the facilitators. Anyway, Oliver was he led me to my first monarch that I caught and put a tag on. This young man. And then last year there was a date that he and I were the two, they always have two facilitators with the group. He and I were the facilitators. And he knew more than I did. And he's bringing me along slowly. Anyway, we were driving back to Knoxville from Cades Cove. We'd stored the gear at Tremont, and we were talking politics, we were talking everything. Now, this is a smart young man. And he had been one of my homeschool kids, one of my kids at IMES when he was much younger. And all of a sudden, I said, Oliver, complete metamorphosis. What came first? The caterpillar or the butterfly? Which in the span of evolution, how did it happen? And Oliver sitting beside me went, oh, that keeps me awake at night. Is it the chicken or the egg? I try to figure it out. Which came first? Caterpillar, totally different. Butterfly, totally different. Which came first? Now, in truth, it all happened more than butterflies have been on this planet roughly, according to the fossil record, 30 million to 50 million years. That's how long it's taken for us to get 17,500 species. But moths were first. Moths have been here much longer. So moths probably perfected some of this, and it just became, some of the moths became butterflies, but as you know, moths spin cocoons out of silk, and butterflies form these beautiful chrysalises. And it blows my mind when I still think, which came first? Which came first? How did it work? How did it work? It's always very logical. You know, nature rewards success. Nature rewards, wow, that worked so beautifully. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. So that was Oliver. He's still wonderful. He and I will be facilitators at Tremont, I'm sure. This was my first experience with this topic of metamorphosis. I was probably Oliver's age. I grew up in Gatlinburg, living in Gatlinburg. And if you know this is a moth, but if you know this caterpillar, it's the tintworm caterpillar or webworm caterpillar that forms those beautiful silk nests in wild cherry trees. I remember one day at IMES, somebody called me and said, I've got one of those blankety blank blank tintworms in my cherry tree. I'm going to soak it in gasoline and burn it out. And I said, no. I said, listen, there's no need to do that. They're just simply, they spin the tent to protect themselves. And studies have shown that birds eat most of them. That's a basic living bird feeder. Just step back and watch. They're lucky if each nest produced one or two caterpillars that survives. You know, if they produced all 200 or 300, we would be covered up with them. We're not covered up with them. There's a balance. There's a balance. But this was one I found when I was Oliver age in Gatlinburg, several of like this, and I had a box that had screen wire all over, and I was curious. Now we did have a time before there was such a thing as online. You had to figure things out by not going to Google. Can you believe that? But anyway, here I'm 10 years old. What has this beautiful caterpillar become? So I put several in a box. I put leaves, I put sticks, and waited, and they spun their little cocoons. That's what they become, a tiny brown moth. I, as a 10-year-old, was kind of disappointed. I really thought they were bust out of there, be 4 inches wide or something. So that's what they formed. But this is really when I started my process of metamorphosis, and this is how when you retire, for folks that aren't retired, you get to be childlike again. It's wonderful. You get up when you want to, you do whatever you want to. You get to be childlike. And so that was why I said, oh, I want to go explore metamorphosis. Now I want to photograph metamorphosis from beginning to end. I've accomplished it once, and you'll see that. But I'm looking for certain butterflies to find the egg of. You got to start with the egg. This is one of everyone's favorite butterflies. Everybody knows the tiger swallowtail. And I live in the woods, have a house surrounded by trees, don't have a lot of flowers. I see these all the time, high in the trees. Their host plants are tulip tree, sweet bay magnolia, and wild cherry. Tulip tree is the state tree, and I have both a wild cherry and a tulip tree off my deck, and I see them dancing around up there all the time. But I'm too old to climb 30, 40, 50 feet up into the tree to look for an egg on a leaf. And I don't know if I would even see the egg that well. They're tiny. So this one I'm still fighting with, how to do the whole process of metamorphosis with a gorgeous tiger swallowtail. This is what the caterpillar looks like of a tiger swallowtail. Isn't it funny how it has evolved to look like bird droppings? You know, the first one that looked like bird droppings, bird went, oh, I ain't touching that. That one survived, and that one moved on to produce more, produce more, produce more. And look at the chrysalis. That is equal, that is so camouflaged, even if I climbed that tree and maybe found a chrysalis, I wouldn't know what it was. It looks so much apart, so right now I'm not high on my hopes of photographing metamorphosis of tiger swallowtails. Zebra swallowtails. Tiger swallowtails like high. 30, 40, 50 feet up. Now they'll come to your flowers to nectar and feed, but up there is where they lay their eggs, where the females lay their eggs. Zebra swallowtails are a little easier. They lay their eggs on pawpaws. I wrote a whole chapter in my first book for the University of Tennessee Press about pawpaws. I love pawpaws. And I have been chasing zebra swallowtails around 7 Islands pawpaw trees for several weeks. I can never quite catch the zebra swallowtail just to get a photo of it close up, and I simply cannot find an egg. I have looked and looked and looked and looked, but that's going on. This is the time of year, remember, that butterflies are very active and birds are not quite so active, so I can refocus. So, but again, tiger swallowtails high in the canopy, zebra swallowtails much lower, down to my eye level. This is what a zebra swallowtail caterpillar looks like. That's seeable, but yet I haven't found one. And that, look at the chrysalis. Again, it looks like a dead leaf hanging from a tree or something. You would pass that and never give it a second notice. So you have to really pay attention to find complete metamorphosis around us. This is the common buckeye. Look at its host plants. Some of these I've never heard of. Blue toadflax plantain, false foxglove, Mexican petunia, firecracker, and cudweed. I haven't yet learned what cudweed yet. I'm trying to, but you can eliminate Mexican petunia and firecracker. Those are invasives from Mexico. You can find them in Florida and along the southern tier. but not here. So I've been focusing on plantain. I've known what that was ever since I watched Mom dig it out of the yard when I was a kid. That's this low. And so I do have plantain around my house, and again, I live in the woods and don't maintain a yard, and I'm out there crawling on my hands and knees looking for eggs. So again, to survive, the common buckeye is low to the ground. You typically see them 3 feet or lower. So I have high hopes eventually I'll find plantain that's got an egg on it. Woo! Anyway, this is what the caterpillars look like. They don't look very inviting to eat. They're like most caterpillars. They're spiky and bristly. And again, look at the chrysalis. Absolutely a bit of camouflage. Red Admiral. This is getting a little easier. I've seen several red admirals and chased them. But look at their host plants. Stinging nettle, false stinging nettle, and in truth, there's several different nettles. There's only one species they truly call stinging nettle, but all of them sting. And I waded into a patch of stinging nettle at 7 Islands looking for eggs, and the next I felt like I'd stuck my hand in a yellow jacket's nest. Sting is the right word. It's not prickly, it stings. You back away and you're rubbing your fingers what was that? You really think you were stung by a bee. But it's a plant, and it's kind of brilliant of them to lay their eggs on a plant that who in the world would want to get close to because of the stings, because the bristles are very tight. Anyway, this is what the caterpillars look like, and again, the chrysalis, a perfect imitation of a dead leaf hanging. Nature is so fascinating, but nature is logical. Nature makes sense. The first chrysalis that looked like a dead leaf, oh, I ain't gonna touch that. It's just a stupid dead leaf. Anyway, that's what succeeded. That's what has evolved onto our time. Who's left? Painted ladies. Thistle, mallows, hollyhock, legumes are the host plants. So it's a wide range of host plants. The ones I've been focusing on are fields of thistles. But walking into a field of thistles is like walking into a field of stinging nettle. Yet again, another brilliant host plant. When the painted lady ancestor said, I think I'll start laying my eggs over here. On the thistle, everyone went, I'm not going over there. That's as sticky as the other. So that's painted ladies. This is another plant. Now I'm wearing gloves, but I'm marching to the thistles covered. And it's been really, really, really hot to walk in there covered with gloves looking for just the eggs of a painted lady. This is what the caterpillar would look like, and this is the chrysalis that's very, very close to opening. We'll do more of that in just a bit. So this, luckily, everyone's favorite butterfly, the monarch, that has a great, wonderful story of migrating to Mexico, that you'll hear Chris like to talk about. They lay their eggs on milkweed. Common milkweed is the most preferred. They do studies, and they can find a monarch in Mexico and extract some fluids and tell what it fed on. And by far, I think I read it's 96% fed on common milkweed. The other two we have locally, swamp milkweed and butterfly weed, which is UT Big Orange. Everywhere you look, that they use those two, but they prefer common milkweed. And as I'm sure Chris Light will tell you, if you plant one, step back because it will spread. At Hines, we planted one in front of the front pond, and pretty soon you couldn't see the front pond. So that's common milkweed, and this is what the females lay their eggs on, because it is as you know, the caterpillars eat the leaves and are filled with toxin, and every good mother monarch wants her young to be toxic. I want my young to be toxic. And even though birds will eat them, not eat them, birds will pick them up and bite them and spit them out. Occasionally I'll find a caterpillar that's been bitten in two and just poof. So that one didn't make it, but that bird learned something. So what I my goal was simple. Monarch, or common milkweed's fairly common, fairly everywhere. It's not covered with thistles, or it's not covered with bristles, or spikes or stingy. So go find common milkweed. Great place to start. You're talking Monarch. I drove down John Sevier Highway, and this would have been a year ago. This would have been the first year of my retirement. So I did accomplish something that year. And there was a ditch line along the highway, a wet ditch line filled with common milkweed. And it was a busy day. It was around rush hour, I think. So I said, okay, go back. And I went back early Sunday morning when there was less traffic, parked the car and waded down into the muddy ditch. And about the third leaf I turned over, there was an egg. Absolutely. Now, I did mention somewhere along the line I'm getting older, so my vision's not quite like it used to be. I went, oh my word, this is destiny, this is destiny. I found an egg. Actually, I found 3 or 4, but I took one back and took enough milkweed leaves to feed it. But as you can see, it's tiny. I put good old FDR dime there so we can tell. I think we still have dimes. I've read there's a coin shortage, so maybe we don't. Well, I can't understand why quarantine would produce a coin shortage, but anyway, it doesn't matter. A female can lay 500 eggs. I think the accurate number is between 400 and 1,000, but she lays 1 per leaf. 1 per leaf, usually on the underside. Why? 1 per leaf. The young, when they hatch, are cannibals. The first one out will eat all of his brothers and sisters, basically, for the nutrients in the eggs or the caterpillar. So that's why she has learned over the millennia, 1 leaf here, 1 leaf there, 1 leaf there. I want all of my 500 to survive and not eat each other. She wants her young to be toxic, but not eat each other. So anyway, that's my egg. I didn't know when it was laid, so I really couldn't say day 1. So I made this day 1 of my photographing Metamorphosis because the egg changed. It elongated and had a dark upper, the top of the egg became dark. It wasn't that little pearl. I went, uh-oh, something's happening. I put FDR down to watch something happen for me. Because even though I was retired, I couldn't sit there for hours and hours. I did sit there for hours and hours through the important parts. But this is day 1. Day 2, we got a caterpillar. That egg had hatched, and if you notice, it's still on the underside of the leaf. FDR guarded it all night, but the caterpillar can't reach the leaf itself because of the fuzziness of the leaf. So it's walking along the top of the fuzz, literally walking along the top of the fuzz until it can find something it can bite into on the leaf. And it certainly can't bite into FDR. This is day 3. It had found the top of the leaf and started chewing little divots into the leaf itself. It didn't dig too deeply because it'd be covered with that sap, that milky sap, and it was too young to swim, I would imagine. So at first we're just eating little divots out of it, and I decided that maybe I needed another measurement. And so I laid down a ruler, and it's an 1/8 of an inch. It's already grown to an 1/8 of an inch. They do. You'll hear from Chris Light. If we were butterflies, we'd be as big as a school bus by the time we were a grown caterpillar. So they grow incredibly fast. I think monarchs. I think the figure I've read is they increase in size by 3,000%. Wow. So day 3. Day 4, I decided to start putting dates in. I did all of this with my cell phone, and the magic of a cell phone, it's easy to use, but everything's dated and timed. You just look at the photograph. So this would be day 4 since we first saw the elongated egg, Sunday, June 23rd, and by now we have doubled in size to 1/4 of an inch. It is eating, and it's on the top of the leaf, and it's eating down into the leaf now. So it's big enough not to worry about getting too much of the milky sap on it. Day 6, you can see, I don't know if you can see where it's at. Where's my pointer? That's where it's hiding. But you can see it's already, it's explored that leaf quite a bit. It's been moving around, moving around. It was the same leaf. I kept it on the same leaf until it had eaten the entire leaf, and then I had to give it another leaf. But that's day 6. Day 7, this would be Wednesday, June 26th. We're up to what, 3/8 of an inch. Now it's starting, wow, that's very seeable. And it's eating, constantly eating. Day 8, I pulled in FDR one more time, or I pulled him in again, just to give a sense of how much it's grown in 8 days beside the dime. And FDR's amazed. He's just like, wow, this is incredible. I'm watching a miracle. And it was FDR and myself watching the miracle. Day 10, Saturday, June 29th, and again, this is last year. Look at that. It's an inch long. It is like, I eat, but I take naps. I'm retired, I take lots of naps, and I do sleep. But anyway, look at it, it's gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous. The head is the end with the longer tentacles. They're not true antennae, they're tentacles. But it's up to an inch. Day 12, Monday, June 1st. Here we're up to at least 1.25 inches. I was trying to get it to, and you can see what's left of the leaf. I was trying to get it to stretch out so I could get a better measurement. But you know, they don't, you can tickle them all you want, but they tend to go the other way, and I tried to keep it by the ruler. So we're at least 1.25 inches, maybe 1 inch and a little farther. Day 13, Tuesday, July 2nd, over 1.5 inches. Fresh leaf. In fact, I had a refrigerator with fresh leaves in it so I could keep it fed. Keep her fed. I'll show you in a minute how I learned that. So it's over 1.5 inches. Where we at? Day 14 after this started, 2 weeks after this started, a fortnight, all of a sudden it has zero interest in eating. It starts roaming. Now, how I kept this was most of the time on my dining room table so I could watch it, but then I thought, oh, well, I need to take it outside. And I wanted to keep it where I could photograph it easily. So I found a vase and filled it with dead branches. It was kind of like the Addams family arrangement for their center table. Dead branches in a vase. And it would climb the vase, climb a stick, turn around, climb a stick, turn around. Zero interest in eating. It would get out to the end of a branch. This is what, July 3rd, 10:55, I think. Yep. It would get to the end of a branch, and it would sway. Look, I'm looking for something else. I want something better than where I'm at. And eventually it would turn around and go back. It was still exploring. Finally, it came to this spot and stopped. And just stayed there. And I watched, it just stayed there. Until I noticed July 3rd, 4 o'clock and 4:48 in the afternoon, it had turned around. The only movement it had done in hours was simply to turn around. I missed the turnaround. I wondered why the turnaround, but it stayed in that same spot. Why? Something about this spot it likes. It's got the je ne sais quoi that it's looking for. And I watched. By this time, I had moved it indoors again and created kind of a fake outdoory look. That's a painting behind it. So I had no idea this may take to midnight. I had no idea, and I needed a way to control light. And eventually I noticed it was spinning this little silk patch. The spinneret is just below its mouth. Spin. And it worked on that. It turned around again. It did another about face. After spinning a little silk patch, it did an about face. What? And I noticed that its hind legs, prolegs, fake legs, on the end of what will be the abdomen, were stuck into that, they grabbed hold of that silk patch. And the middle legs, I'm sure Chris Light will tell you, are fake legs, prolegs are really part of the ectoskeleton. The true legs are up front. The true legs out of insects have 6 legs. Here we are, 8 o'clock at night, still the same day. And I looked, and it's only holding on with the claspers on the silk pad and one set of fake legs, prolegs. Even its true legs have dropped off. So that's the only 2 points it's holding on. One pair is holding on to the dead branch. The other pair, claspers, is holding on to the silk. And I'm mesmerized. All of a sudden, it released. The prolegs released. It's hanging only by the final set of prolegs, the anal set called claspers, and it's just hanging there. 8 o'clock at night, or 9 o'clock, I was going. I wanted to call every one of you. Get over to my house. There's a miracle within a miracle. Get over here. But I didn't have your phone numbers. And don't trust me with your phone numbers. Anyway, there it hung. Here we're at 9:32 in the morning. So luckily, I slept on the sofa and kept janking awake. Oh, please wait till I'm cognizant before you do anything really, really miracle. They call this, and I don't know why, the hanging J. Don't know where they got that term, hanging J. But there it was hanging from the silk. Hanging from the silk. We're at 10 o'clock a.m., July 4th, Independence Day. Now, it twitches inside there. It twitches. It's not perfectly still. Every now and then you see kind of a convulsion, a twitch, and you're mesmerized. This is better than 99.9% of what's on television. And as Springsteen sung years ago, 53 channels and nothing on. Now it's 453 channels and nothing on. But anyway, here it's hanging in my living room or in my dining room, and I'm going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It drops to almost perfect vertical. Notice that the tentacles have just dropped useless. They're part of the ectoskeleton. They're just hanging there. It started to split. Behind the head, started to split, and for the first time you start to see the pupa. And again, I was a 10-year-old jumping and hopping around the room. Oh my God, there's a miracle in my house. There's a miracle. And it splits. It's starting to split. It's starting to get out of that too tight skin. It is almost like you're trying to get out of those tight blue jeans you never should have put on because they were 5 years old, and you're hanging by your feet to do it. And you're wiggling, and you're wiggling. And that's what it was doing. It was wiggling, it was wiggling. 10:11, it's pulling, the ectoskeleton has slowly been wiggled to the top. I'm going to skip that. I repeated it later, accidentally. 10:11, still yet, we're in the same minute, and it's still working to free that skin. And again, every butterfly out there does the same thing. How come we're not all sitting outside staring at, where is this complete metamorphosis that's going on everywhere that he talks about? It's got the wiggle that it no longer needs the ectoskeleton. The exoskeleton cannot hold it anyway, so it's got to get rid of it. It gets to a point where it's way at the top, and this is where something this is another miracle within a miracle. At the end of the caterpillar, there is an appendage that looks like a black stem. It's called a craymaster, and the end of that black stem looks like Velcro. It's tiny hooks, tiny, tiny hooks. What this caterpillar is still holding on with the claspers, the final pair of anal prolegs, but in time it's got to let that go, and the craymaster has to stab up into that silk pad and hang on tight. There is the photograph where, if you look carefully, the craymaster, and that's black, and the ectoskeleton is black, but there looks like a tiny stem that is plugged into the silk pad. This happens in a split of a split second, and I've read that if it misses with the craymaster, or if it doesn't hook in tight enough, quickly enough, it falls, and it cannot be helped. Unless, if you happen to see that, you can pick it up and tie black thread around the craymaster and then rehang it. So if we happen to be there, we can save it. Otherwise, it is laying on the ground, and it's to complete metamorphosis, it cannot do. Okay, it's shed the final skin. It's only hanging by that craymaster that's really hanging on tight, has to hang on tight for a long time. And it starts to contract. This is July 4th of last year, 10:17 a.m., 10:32 a.m., July 4th, 10:38 a.m., 30 minutes after pupation began. It is starting to form that gorgeous little chrysalis that most of us have seen or seen photographs of, only held by the craymaster. And I think craymaster comes from the Greek meaning hang on tight. Anyway, 5 hours later, this is 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a gorgeous, gorgeous chrysalis. I brought FDR back. I wanted to compare. And in hindsight, I wish I'd have held FDR on the right, because he was always looking at the object of attention. But when you're jumping around the room like a crazy man, you don't think all the time. So there is a gorgeous little chrysalis. Inside there is nutritional goop, the cellular fluid breaking down, kind of like green toothpaste. But it's not all that. This is a living creature. Its heart is beating, its lungs are still taking in air, it's still living. There's tiny discs of cells that are doing their job. They're called imaginal cells, and I love that term, imaginal. They are keeping the life processes going. This is not an inanimate object. It's a living thing, and the bulk of it is goo. But it's got to rearrange all of those cells to become what we know it's going to become. You look, we're doing great on time. I ended up clipping off the end of this branch because I wanted to get this one photograph on the left to see, if you look carefully in the photograph, see if I can get this going. That's the craymaster. This is the abdomen of the ultimate butterfly. You can see the proboscis right here. You can see the legs are tucked up like that, and you can see the wings on the sides. So, here's a secret. Our secret. Oh, you can tell people. That is a female. And you can tell that is a female. Right there, there's a little cleft, like a cleft chin. Right there. Females have the little cleft, males do not. So that's the first time I said, "Hi, how you been, lady?" So I knew and that's another reason I clipped off the edge, at the end of the branch. I wanted to get a sense of the gender. I wanted to know what was in there. I'm a kid. I'm going to open the package. But the little, they're not 100% sure why the gold spangles, but those are air intake valves, because it is breathing. It is taking in air. It is taking in air. It is taking in air. So it is a living creature that is going through complete metamorphosis, finishing metamorphosis. Here we are, day 20, Tuesday, July 9th. This was my centerpiece on my dining room table for several days, and I would go, "Oh my gosh, isn't that the most beautiful thing in the world? Isn't that the most beautiful thing in the world?" Day 24, Saturday, July 13th, 9 days after pupation began, what do you see? You're starting to see wings, orange and black, orange and black. The beauty of this, the chrysalis itself, the shell itself is transparent. It's like it wants you to see this miracle inside. Transparent. It is completely transparent. Anyway, let me do this. That was Saturday. I went, okay, I got to get a short night's sleep. I got to get up early in the morning because I think something big is going to happen the next morning. And I got up early, 6:19, and had my coffee. And here again, this is on my dining room table. I'm drinking coffee, watching. Oh my word! 3 weeks after the first caterpillar photograph that I showed, and 10 days after pupation began, there's the butterfly. Whoa! 7:50, still the same. I think I'm on second cup of coffee. All of a sudden, that's one thing I wanted to know: how is it born? How does it come out? It comes out head first from the bottom, and you can see the legs pushing, the legs pushing. The legs have to open up that clear, transparent chrysalis that's we all can see and get out of it. But here is another danger point. Gravity. If it doesn't get a good hold, and right now it's kind of the abdomen is large and that's holding inside. The legs are holding to the inside part as best they can, but if it doesn't happen perfectly, it can literally fall to the ground and die. So, but this one worked beautifully. The shot on the right is one I did during my practice session. I did this like 3 different times to get a sense of timing. Legs pushing, it wants to be born. Legs pushing, legs pushing, legs. It's got to widen up that chrysalis enough to get out. This is a miracle. Did I say that enough? Anyway, let's get those wings out. Let's get those wings out. But again, it's holding on tight, and gravity can not be its friend. All of a sudden, the abdomen swings down. So now it's really got to hang on tight because the bulk of the weight is now below the chrysalis. The photo on the right was from my practice session, so I got a sense of timing. This is what? We're up to almost 9 o'clock in the morning. Now it's pulling out. Its wings are tiny, and its abdomen is pulsating. The abdomen is pushing fluids into the wings to inflate the wings. Still holding on, kind of like this, inside. Finally, it's got a leg free to reach outside, because it's got to have a really good hold, because its hold on life at this point is very tenuous. And it's moving, it's spinning, and the abdomen is pulsating. It's animated, but finally it's got to reach out, and finally it's out. It's holding on to the chrysalis. As you can see, it's clear. I'm going to move through these fairly quickly. We're at about the end of the time anyway. It's got to get those wings pumped up so the abdomen is pulsating. Look how huge the abdomen is. Inflating those wings, till the wings are almost as big as the abdomen. And at this point, if you barely touch it, the wings feel like wet velvet. Just barely touch. It's got to inflate those wings, pump it full of fluids. Look at the elevate shot. Wings are now hanging down, starting to look like gorgeous drapery. Wings still inflating. We're now at 9 o'clock in the morning. Dangling still. Till finally it reaches 9:06, and I'm on my 3rd cup of coffee and wishing I could run to the bathroom. Anyway, it's hanging there beautifully. It's a butterfly. It is a butterfly. We've watched it the whole step of the way. This is a butterfly. And it hangs like, this is 10 minutes after the emergence began, after we first saw its head pop out of the bottom. And it pretty much hangs like that for hours while its wings dry. And it's drying, and I'm watching. I'm now, it's kind of, this is one of the parts that's slower than the true dramatic sessions. All of a sudden, it starts flapping around, and it climbed out on the branch. And again, we can confirm, yes, indeed, it's a female. Doesn't have those black spots. But it's climbing around. It's slowly working the wings. So I wanted to do the right thing, and I took it back to where I found the egg. I took it back to the same flooded ditch along Johnsonville Highway, and I let it out. I think that's bone set, and it could start nectaring for the first time. Now, if I'd have been at Tremont with the kids, like I will be starting in September, they're working out a COVID protocol to do it this year, but I will be one of the facilitators on certain days. If I was there, we would put a tag on it. If we had caught it there, we'd put a round tag on it with a number and record the number and where we did it. Because that butterfly is going to Mexico. And I couldn't get to Mexico with maps and a GPS unit. I don't know how. Anyway, if I was at Tremont, after we'd tag it, I would reach it to one of the students, one of the kids, so they could see it take its first flight.